Hey everyone, so I didn't know this, but apparently hammer curls are stupid.
Dr. Mike here for RP Strength. Hammer curls are stupid, and if you do them, so are you.
Now I'm not going to address this entire video, but here's what you're going to learn in this video. Number one, you're going to learn why hammer curls aren't stupid and why they're awesome. Number two, you're going to learn about the anatomy of the muscles trained in hammer curls. That's different from regular curls. And then number three, you're going to get my personal favorite recommendation for how I personally like to do hammer curls. So Mike gives 3 reasons why hammer curls are stupid, and I'm just going to refute them one at a time.
A lot of people, when they go, hey, like, flex your bicep, they're not like, wait, hold on, Stacy. Look, can you see this shit right here? She's like, you're covering up your bicep, but just not important. It's my fucking brax, brah.
Okay, yes, hammer curls. They don't train the biceps as well as biceps curls do. Big shocker. This would kind of be like saying, though, that leg presses are stupid because they don't train the rectus femoris as well as the single joint quads. It's just basically like saying that a tool is bad because you're not trying to do something that the tool was meant to do.
Your biceps by themselves, the bicep brachii muscle, has a huge local maximum recoverable volume. You can accumulate 20, 30, or even 40 or more working sets for your bicep if you ease into it over time per week. And if during my arm workout, I got triceps, I got biceps, but I also spend a lot of time on forearms and a ton of time on brax, brah, by doing fucking hammer curls, then all of a sudden you could just have been doing more bicep work.
So there's this concept in training called diminishing returns, where when you start to do more and more sets, as you add sets, the relative stimulus of each set gets less and less and less. And I really highly doubt that literally any person watching this needs more than 15 or 20 sets for biceps every single week. If you're able to do 30 sets, 40 sets, I really highly doubt that the quality of those sets is actually high. So your biceps, they don't need 40 fucking sets per week. They probably just need anywhere from 10 to 15 and, make those sets relatively hard. And then you have plenty of time and space to dedicate to brachialis and brachioradialis specific training.
Almost every single row that you can think of and vertical pull that you can think of, pull-ups, pull-downs, assisted pull-ups, rows of every kind, almost all of them are performed with a hammer grip. Thus, almost all rows deliver substantial amounts of muscle growth stimulus to your brax. Like, you're already crushing out your brax.
So is it true that pull downs and rows target the brachialis and the brachioradialis? Yes. Is it also true that if you're actually doing pull downs and rows correctly for the muscles you're trying to target, i.e. any different part of the back, well, you shouldn't be at a point where at the end of the set, your brachialis or your brachioradialis is remotely fatigued at all. In other words, you should be able to finish a set, let's say, of pull-ups and go into a set of hammer curls and be able to actually do a relatively solid set of hammer curls relative to what you could do at your maximum. The reason I have this opinion is because if you're doing back exercises that really are fatiguing these forearm bender muscles, well, guess what? That means a lot of the stimulus that should have been going to your back is actually going to these other elbow flexors. In other words, you're fucking up the technique of your rows and your pull downs if all you feel is basically just fatigue in those tissues that Mike is referring to. Imagine if someone said to you, dude, you really don't need to train that many sets of triceps because your pressing has it covered. You'd be like, well, when I press, my chest, I feel like is, my front delts, I feel like those are doing most of the work. I feel like my triceps aren't getting a brunt of the stimulus. Rightly so. So to say to someone, oh, you only need a couple sets of triceps, maybe here or there, well, that really just means that you, when you're pressing, are feeling a lot of triceps, which to me, again, is counter to the goal of doing a press. The major goal of doing a press is to train your chest and your front delts and your triceps secondarily. So I guess if you're fucking up your pulls enough, then, they can basically just turn into a hybrid motion, and I guess then you won't need to do extra hammer curls. But if you're serious about maintaining solid technique on back exercises, then you're gonna wanna add hammer curls as a separate and additional exercise. Before we get to the anatomy and my exercise recommendations, I just wanna speak to the purely visual aspect of this because Mike seems to be confused about the amount of size that the brachialis actually adds to the arm. So if you look at this picture right here, this is a picture of Phil Heath. Now, Phil Heath is one of the best bodybuilders of all time with the best arms of all time. So this is the most extreme of an extreme example, but you can see that the brachialis right here contributes substantially to the entire size of the arm. The brachioradialis also contributes substantially to the entire size of the arm. Even if you backtrack years and years and years backward into his career, you can still see these muscles playing a prominent role in the way that his arm looks. And to be honest, this looks sick to me. Like it really is something that completes the look of the arm. So I do think isolated, dedicated training to these muscles can make a big difference in your training. Even if you say, oh yeah, Phil's the exception, which of course he is, even if you look at me, someone who's like somewhat of a muscular natural lifter, this is the size that the brachialis is going to add to the arm. So you all see how like this like lump right here, that is essentially the brachialis bulging outward. And then obviously all this tissue from this bulge this way is the brachioradialis. So all this stuff right here and all this stuff right here are going to add size even to the natural, lifter's arm to make it look bigger. Not to mention the fact that because the brachialis is underneath of the biceps, it actually not only makes the biceps look wider from the front, it actually puffs it out a little bit to make it actually look bigger, much in the same way that, say, the soleus makes, the inner calf, makes the outer calf, the gastroc, look bigger. All right, so enough with the bullshit. Let's just quickly go over the anatomy and then my favorite exercise or version of a hammer curl that I think all of you will pretty much love. So the first thing that we need to keep in mind with the anatomy of these tissues is that the brachialis, it runs from the upper arm, the humerus, down to the ulna. So what that means is it doesn't contribute to rotating the forearm. The brachioradialis, however, that one that is longer and kind of runs along the forearm, that one attaches from the upper arm as well, but attaches down to the radius bone, which basically just means that it can rotate the forearm. And the brachioradialis, what it can do is if your palm is like this, it can rotate your palm to neutral. And if your palm is like this, it can rotate your palm to neutral. So it's actually an opposite rotator depending on the position of the hand. So if you want to maximize for recruitment of the brachioradialis, you want to do something that's perfectly neutral, like a hammer grip, because it's not going to try to pull your hand out of any position. That's really how muscle biasing works, is just whatever conserves the most amount of energy. So if your hand is like this and you're doing curls like this and even maybe semi-pronated slightly, those are positions that are really going to isolate these two muscles, because you're basically taking the biceps and you are allowing it to do less total work throughout the course of a set. So even though, yes, the biceps will work in these hammer curl variations, it'll work a fraction of as much as it would compared to your normal supinated dumbbell curl. So long story short, the brachialis, it doesn't care actually, the one up here, it doesn't care where your forearm is, but your other one, your brachioradialis, does. So when I'm doing any kind of hammer curl variation, I'll just select a neutral grip to maybe a slightly pronated grip. Both of those things, pick your comfort, are fantastic. Now, insofar as my favorite variation goes, this is actually something that I see very, very few people doing when it comes to their hammer curls, which is that most people, they just stand at their, with their arms at their sides, they keep their upper arm fixed, and they basically do the hammer curl this way. I think that's a fine variation, but it's a variation that will, relatively speaking, involve a little bit more of the biceps. You want to take the biceps out of it even more and isolate those other guys. One thing that you can do is, instead of just isolating your arms, like fixing your arms here and doing a curl, is basically pretend like you're doing a row. So imagine you have a cable in front of you, you're grabbing a rope or something, and imagine that you're pulling your hands to your chest and you're allowing your elbows to flare outward, right? What the arm moving backward actively does is it actually antagonizes the function of the biceps via the shoulder a little bit. If that was confusing to you, just think about it this way. Because my arm is moving backward, the biceps are able to actually pull it forward. So this moving the arm backward as you do the curl, i.e. allowing your elbows to flare as you do the curl, will disengage the biceps a little bit more than that other variation, because you're creating basically an opposite joint action. So the variation that I really like to do is a hammer curl, where you're allowing this upper arm to move almost like you would be doing like a row, like in an outward direction, but instead of pulling the hand outward, you're pulling the hand toward your chest and your nipple line. And so when you use a rope, just angle a cable forward. You can even stand up to do this and maybe hinge over, but I like to do it on like a seated cable station, where my feet are propped up, I'm grabbing the rope, and I'm basically using really, really long pauses in this position. I don't worry too much about getting all the way to the lockout, because that's not really where the load is. So basically just move through that range of motion, pause in the squeeze, keep your hands in that pronated / neutral position, and then really, really isolate motion of the hand in a straight line like this. Don't try to pull outward, and don't try to keep your upper arms fixed and do a normal curl. So that's my personal favorite way to execute a hammer kind of curl. Again, of course, you could do the traditional dumbbell option. That's still fantastic. Of course, you could do the traditional rope option where the rope is just pulling you down. That's also fantastic. You could do other variations of this, like on a machine, you could orient your hand differently. As long as your hand is in that neutral grip position and you are tugging on something, you're probably going to be good enough to go. And again, whether that's dumbbell, cable, or machine, it doesn't really matter. But I'll repeat, my personal and favorite preference to really differentiate the motion is to allow that elbow flaring action. Another way that you could do this, by the way, is instead of using a rope and pulling like this, you could use dumbbells and just basically do the same thing, maybe lying down on a chest support or something similar. Hey, thanks for watching. Did you know that I have an upcoming Biomechanics manual? It's currently on pre-order for 50% off, and it goes live on August 22nd. In this manual, you're gonna learn all the things you need to understand biomechanics from the ground up. So regardless of your current level of expertise and knowledge, this book will be for you. Check the link in the description below if you want to support me, and check that out. And I'll see you all in the next video.